It's great to be here and seeing places in the world that I would not have otherwise seen, and to meet the Swedish people and see your beautiful cities here has been lovely. So I just would like to start by telling you who I am and how I came to be doing what I'm doing today, because many of you may not know that, and I think it's important to understand where I came from, because I think it will give you a better picture of the validity of what I'm saying. And I realize that I'm speaking English, and that is not everybody's native language, so if there's a word or something that needs to be translated, you can just raise your hand and somebody will translate. I'm speaking much slower than I usually do, and much more clearly, and so hopefully that will help. And maybe we could keep questions to the end so that we can keep this moving smoothly. First off, I will tell you that I lost my glasses, and I wonder where I could have put them. Oh, here they are. I started out in college, in university, and I got a bachelor's degree in physics, and then I worked in a laboratory for several years, and in that time I decided that I wanted to work with people and not rats and dead cow brains and things like that I was working with. So I went to medical school and had one of the happiest days of my life. The day I graduated felt like a big accomplishment, and then I moved on to my residency in New York City. And during that period, I realized something that I did not realize before I went to medical school, which is that what I had really become was a highly trained technician for the pharmaceutical industry. And this was saddening to me, because my original intention was to go and be able to heal people and cure their diseases and bring them to higher levels of health. And I didn't learn to do that in medical school. I learned to do that later in the past few years. Now, I don't have anything completely against the pharmaceutical industry, because I have witnessed the miracles of giving a drug to somebody who needs it when they need it. It's fantastic. If you want to get rid of a symptom, pain, if you have organ failure, we need this kind of medicine. The problem is that when people have minor issues, health issues, that this kind of medicine is used automatically as first line of defense, and none of these drugs from pharmaceutical industry bring people to higher states of natural health. Whereas there are many nutraceuticals and nutritional advice that can be given to people that can do that, and then they can avoid these drugs. And that's really my belief at this point in how I practice medicine, but that wasn't always the case. So during my residency, when I realized this problem, I decided that instead of doing things to people that were healthy that I did not necessarily agree with, like sending them for mammograms and vaccinating them, and all of the things that we do to healthy people in the narrow corridor that I was allowed to work within the conventional medical system, I thought, well, let me take what I've learned and try to just use it on really sick people. So I specialized in kidneys. And so that took 5 more years beyond medical school to do all of that. And I worked for approximately 14 years in doing nephrology, which is practicing with mostly with kidneys and high blood pressure and diabetes and things like that, some metabolic diseases. And I taught medical students, I taught residents, and I taught doctors in that period of time. I worked in academia. I have a couple of papers published in peer-reviewed journals. And it was around 2009 that there was something that did not feel right to me. And that was when several people came in to the hospital having new onset kidney failure after they had been vaccinated for the swine flu. And that year in USA, we had separate vaccine, one for swine flu, one for seasonal flu. And for whatever reason, I know you folks had problem with that vaccine as well, but we had a different problem as far as I'm concerned. And that was people told me that they were fine until they had that vaccine. And then all of a sudden they had normal kidney function, and all of a sudden they now needed dialysis. And several people this happened with. And I thought, well, this is a problem that we need to investigate. Because any drug that causes kidney failure, we would stop and we would discuss it. But when it came to vaccination, the response I got from my colleagues and coworkers was very different. And so I brought this problem to the administration, and they told me that, these patients did not have kidney failure from the flu shot, and that they had flu, and that's why they had kidney failure. But these patients had no flu symptoms, so they had no basis to say what they were saying to me. And after that, I started to ask questions when new patients would come to me, either with new problems or with worsening of old problems. And this is a question that every doctor needs to add to their list of questions, which is, when was your last vaccine? Because often you will make a correlation between a new symptom and a vaccine, and often you will find numerous case reports in the peer-reviewed medical literature that can support the potential for the vaccine to cause this problem. So once I did that, I saw that there was a correlation, and oftentimes I would see within 24 hours of a vaccine, for instance, a patient in the hospital would come in with borderline normal kidney function, get a vaccine, and kidney function would go down within 24 hours, and the vaccine was still denied as the cause. Our hospital was vaccinating people who, I remember I walked into a room and there was a young man who had cancer, some sort of lymphoma, and he was on chemotherapy. And the pharmacist had just come in to offer him a flu shot and a pneumonia shot, and he had consented to say okay, and they were about to give it. And I canceled that order and realized later that in our hospital, the policy was that my patients could be vaccinated under my name for the order, even though I didn't order it. That was the policy, to offer every patient that was conscious, no matter what their disease, these vaccines. And so I think that should stand out to everybody as problematic. Now, would you want to give a flu shot and a pneumococcal vaccine to a man who has cancer and is on chemotherapy right that moment? That seems very logical to me to just say, no, you wouldn't do that. I saw vaccines being given to people who were having heart attacks while they were having the heart attacks, while they had active sepsis, while they had new onset kidney problems, and numerous other ailments that there was no scientific literature to support vaccinating. But the ethos was, vaccines are safe and effective, and they need to be given. Well, I started doing research at that point, and what I found was very much counter to tradition and to what I had been told in medical school. You may not know this, but doctors are not taught about vaccines in medical school. We are not taught what's in vaccines as far as the adjuvants. We are not taught how vaccines are manufactured as far as what kind of animals go into them. We are not taught the potential dangers of vaccination, and we are basically given a piece of paper that says when the vaccines are due and to give them. And I found this to be very alarming, and even more so when I researched the history of smallpox and the history of polio, two diseases that I was continuously told were eradicated by vaccination. My research that I wrote in a book with Roman Bystrionic was completely counter to that. And in fact, populations who stopped vaccinating for smallpox, their smallpox diseases declined and death from smallpox declined. And with the polio vaccine, the story is so complicated, but basically just saying that I today do not believe that the injected polio vaccine is the reason why we saw polio go away. It does not make polio go away at all. It can still be passed around through populations, and the polio is not what I once thought it was. So, given all that, I decided to leave my conventional job and do research. And today I study between 6 and 12 hours every day, 7 days per week, learning immunology, history, toxicology, genetics, and all kinds of things that one must understand in order to know the deeper details of the problems with vaccination. So what I'm going to tell you today is largely based on my research and on peer-reviewed literature. You will see on many of my slides there will be a number called PMID, and you can go and look up these articles that I will be showing you by going to PubMed, PubMed.com, and put that number in, and these articles will come up. Many of them you will get full text, and some of them you'll get just the abstract. And I think that it is important for you to hear both sides. Now, I'm well aware that the medical authorities use fear in order to get populations to vaccinate. I have evidence of that, which I can show you. I'm also well aware that they do not think that you should be educated and informed, but the authorities tell doctors to persuade you and to use fear if necessary, and to kick you out of their office if you will not vaccinate. And these are the kind of tactics and techniques that are used to get people to vaccinate themselves and their babies. And I don't think this is fair. I think that you are all intelligent enough to look at both sides and decide for yourself, should I vaccinate my baby? Should I vaccinate myself? Should I recommend vaccines to my mother and father? And it's a big problem when people are told not to look at the other side. And what you might notice, if you've been in the middle of this problem yourself, is that the people who want to vaccinate are often very aggressive, and they don't want you to hear the other side. And that should make a light bulb in your head go off. Why don't they want me to hear the other side? Why don't they think I can actually listen to both and come up with my own decision? See, I will never tell you not to vaccinate, but they will always tell you to vaccinate for everything. That alone, I believe, should be a red flag to you, that I'm saying you listen to everything and then you choose. What you do is your responsibility. And that's not what the people who are supporting this aggressive vaccination campaigns, more and more vaccines all the time to little babies. That's not what they're saying.